up front. How are you?
Hey, good.
Good to see you guys. Glad to know that you're doing safe and that you guys are all well during this COVID-19 storm, as I've been calling it, the Corona storm, as well as everything else that has been happening around our nation. We're going to be talking about some really good stuff here today, something that I think that a conversation I think that has been needed for quite some time in the theater community. And this is all in reference to a letter that was written and published this Monday. Over 300 artists of color, Black, Indigenous, and people of color came together to express their grievances and how they have felt working in American theater. The letter was titled Dear White America Theater. And before we go into that, I want to read something because that letter was actually based off of a speech that was given by the iconic August Wilson back in 1996 from the Theater Communication Group National Conference. And a portion of that is what I'm about to read now. If you don't know, I will tell you, Black theater in America is alive. It is vibrant. It is vital. It just isn't funded. Black theater doesn't share in the economics that would allow it to support its artists and supply them with meaningful avenues to develop their talent, broadcast, and disseminate ideas crucial to its growth. The economics are reserved as privilege to the overwhelming abundance of institutions that preserve, promote, and perpetuate white culture. I wanted to read that because I felt that that was, in the New York Times write-up about the letter to white theater, they mentioned that that letter was based off of that speech. And basically what August Wilson is saying is that, you know what, Black theater has been around since we've been in this country. It was first part of what we had to do to survive on plantations, and that was entertaining master. But now that we have moved on from that and Black theater has expanded, you've got so many theater companies out there, we're just not being funded, we're not being heard, our Black artists are not being heard, our stories are really not being told. And that's primarily what this letter is about. So many artists signed that letter, and you guys are also on that letter as well as having signed and expressing how you guys feel. And so I want to start off with you, Tinashe. We'll go with ladies first. Can we talk about an experience that you may have had where you felt that your voice was not being heard, where you felt that you were not totally being seen as a woman of color in the American theater community and here in the Atlanta community?
Yeah, I can talk about here in the Atlanta community. When I was directing a production of Dominique Morisseau's Pipeline, and I felt that at every creative decision that I had, my artistic director, a white female artistic director, questioned, bullied, challenged, undermined every decision, and it was that I had to prove every move to her. And I understand that, there is a very interesting relationship between artistic director and visiting director, right? Like you need to run a lot of your decisions through them, because ultimately they are looking at the bigger picture. They know their audience. But what happens when you have an artistic director who questions everything you do, a woman, a Black woman, there's a perception that you don't trust me. And it's hard when you look into the eyes of your cast member, you look at your design team, and they watch you being spoken to like you are a child. And I will filter all of that kind of resistance through the lens of race, because I am qualified, I'm knowledgeable of the subject matter, I have done my research in terms of what is needed technically, and the lack of trust becomes something that is very personal and something that I cannot control the package that I've come in. So that is an experience that I've had on several occasions where I just felt that I was being questioned more than when I have watched other white male directors who know even less get away with ridiculous choices, and everybody goes along with it. So I think that's why I signed this letter, because we are all asking ourselves in this moment, As we're seeing change happening in society, where's the change going to happen here in our practice? And we can't move forward without calling out that pain. We can't move forward if we can't, until that pain is forgiven and acknowledged. So the moment that I am in right now, that I think all of us are in, is this collective grief, this collective trauma that's been suppressed for generations, these microaggressions that we need to express it, have it recognized. And now what we're talking about is now we have to be aspirational in what is it that we want.
Keith, what about you? Any type of experiences that you would like to share?
There's some ideological things. So I work at Spelman College, and my chair, Aku Kadogo, lived in Australia for almost 30 years, right? So when she came back to the States and she was looking at plays, she just was exhausted at going to see the stories that were on stage because she's an Afrofuturist. She tells indigenous people's stories. That's the kind of director she is. She does a lot of devised work. She's a choreographer as well. And I didn't really clock that until she said it. And I think that the lack of opportunities for us to tell our own stories in our own spaces have left us on a treadmill and an infancy in our development of how we tell stories. Or can we see past this moment or past this trauma that we've been living in for all these centuries? So we keep telling these stories in these white spaces, hoping that these white audiences will see and empathize so that we can then tell stories about, okay, what do Black folks look like in 2050? As opposed to always going back to slavery and plantation. But I think it's the lack of recognition and empathy that these white spaces provide for us, which keep us in this space. And I didn't clock it until she said it. That's so ideological.
Yeah. And Jamil, I want to say that, True Colors was kind of ahead of the curve with your current season, which has been focusing on African-American women playwrights. You guys wanted to really put a spotlight on shows that are written by us and written for us. And so as a artistic director of a theater house, you've been doing this for quite some time, even before you came here to Atlanta. What are some of the things that you experienced on your journey before getting here? And what have you experienced being an artistic director in this city?
No, I think one of the things that I've been struggling with is that the ways in which I was complicit in this white supremacist system that the American theater supports, and that the rat race that they put artists of color on to try to squeeze into one of the few spots, the way in which the authentic experiences of people of color are manicured to fit the taste of predominantly white serving institutions and their audience. I remember becoming aware of it and needing to fight back. And that is why I started, a Black arts organization in the Twin Cities called the New Griots Festival, but still very much trying to figure out, okay, how to, at my time, I was figuring out how to infiltrate, germinate, and eradicate, like, from inside those institutions. And moving to True Colors and coming to Atlanta, realizing that we could have a profound effect on solving it inside of our own spaces, right? Like, what are the ways in which True Colors has benefited or perpetuated those types of systems of inequity? And then what can we do to advance them? So the She Griot season this year was responding to the idea that only 4% of plays on the American theater stage were written by Black women. And it's because Black women are only often given directing opportunities when the play matches their experience, and I use those quotes very broadly, that means that the Black women who are directing plays probably aren't at a percentage that's much higher than that 4%. So what can True Colors do? And looking at our history, had we been hiring Black women directors? No, not nearly enough. Had we been, making sure that Black women's stories were being told as far as playwrights, hadn't been doing it enough. So how can we commit to it our own ways, as opposed to just arguing and yelling at predominantly white institutions who weren't doing it we can fix it ourselves. So that's what we try to do.
And I was going to go back to you guys, Keith and Tinashe. What are some of the things that you as the performers would like to see come out of this letter? And I'll start with you, Keith.
You know, we're not a monolith, right? You look at that letter and you look at the 300 people that signed it, and then the over 40,000 who signed it since it went live. All those people are not a monolith. Those are different people with different set of problems, different set of characteristics, different set of talents. One thing I would like to see as a director, I would like to be able to not always have to, even though my wheelhouse is Black theater, I think it's only my wheelhouse because that's the only thing I've ever been able to do. I've been fired from a Shakespeare show before. And at that point, I was like, well, you can keep your Shakespeare. I love Black theater, and I'm gonna engage in that and commit to it. And I've loved my career for that. But because we're not a monolith, there are so many other ways that stories can be told in the hands of a director of color. You know, if a director of color is directing Brooklyn Boy, it's going to have a different feel than one of our white counterparts. You know, if a transgender person is directing, it's going to have a different feel. It's going to be a different entry point. So I just want the conversations to be, and people can't help it, right? They can't help it unless they clock it. They can't clock their own systemic racism or limitations of their imagination. I joke with Tinashe about this. I love Lord of the Rings, right? I love it. I've only seen each of them one time, because even in a white man's fantasy, you can't
be in it.
You can't see us in your fantasy. It just blows my mind. You have an opportunity to make one of those people a person of color or transgender or gay or whatever, not whatever, or Chinese or whatever. Well, I'll say that ever again, right? But you limit yourself because of your own preconceived notions of what is acceptable. And I've told Tinashe that we talk a lot, but people are so concerned about what they're going to lose, they don't even think about what they'll gain. You may gain a relationship, but not just a relationship with an individual, but a relationship with another community that is untapped, that you haven't even thought about getting into the seat, because your seats have always looked like full white audiences. But once you start letting people in the door, we come and see our stuff. Black Panther was a great example of that.